In the early days of the world, before kingdoms rose and armies marched, before people learned to carve stones or build their pride into towers, the earth was quiet. Forests whispered softly, rivers ran like silver threads through untouched valleys, and the sky felt closer, clearer, almost like heaven itself leaned toward the earth. It was a world still young, a world still learning the weight of sin and the sweetness of obedience. And in that world, among thousands of wandering souls, a single child was born, a child who did not cry loudly, who did not grasp for the world, who simply opened his eyes as if he was already listening to something no one else could hear. His name was Enoch. From the very beginning, there was something different about him. When other children chased each other through the fields, loud and restless, Enoch would wander quietly along the riverbanks. He would sit beneath the tall trees, touching their bark gently, listening to the wind as if it carried secrets. His eyes, deep and still, watched the birds more than people. He seemed to sense the unseen, the quiet patterns of creation, the heartbeat beneath the world. Other children thought he was strange, too silent for his age. But his mother would smile softly and say, "He hears things we cannot." And his father often watched him thoughtfully, wondering what God had planned for a boy like that. As Enoch grew, so did the darkness of the world around him. People had begun to drift away from the one who made them. The land was rich, and people became proud. Some built idols of stone. Others worshipped the strength of their own hands. Violence quietly crept into the valleys. Jealousy grew like weeds choking a garden. The world was changing, and not for the better. But Enoch walked differently. He had a purity in him that did not fit the world he lived in. He did not seek power or land or praise. His heart leaned toward heaven in a way no one could fully explain. The older he grew, the more he felt the pull of a voice gentle and holy, a voice that seemed to whisper when the world was silent. And one night, when the sky stretched wide with stars and the world lay still, that voice came to him. Not in thunder, not in fire, not in trembling mountains, but in a breath. Soft, warm, alive. Enoch. He froze. The river beside him drifted quietly, as if waiting. The wind hushed its movement through the leaves. Even his heartbeat slowed. "Lord," he whispered. And in that sacred moment, the presence of God drew near, closer than the air around him, closer than his own thoughts. "I am here," the voice replied. Enoch bowed his head, trembling yet unafraid. It was like standing in sunlight after centuries of night. From that night onward, everything changed. Enoch didn't just believe in God, he walked with him. Not occasionally, not when he needed help, not when fear pushed him to pray. He walked with God daily, hour by hour, thought by thought. There were mornings when he rose before dawn, stepping outside to find the golden edge of sunrise, and he felt God's nearness before he even spoke. There were evenings when he sat by the fading light, and the presence of God settled around him like a warm cloak. He carried no special staff. He wore no prophet's mantle. He performed no grand miracles. His miracle was his walk, and that walk changed him. He saw the world differently, not with human frustration, but with divine sorrow. He saw the violence and deception spreading through villages. He saw families breaking apart, people stealing, lying, chasing the satisfaction that never lasted. He saw humans forgetting the God who breathed life into them. And Enoch, with a heart aligned to heaven, started to speak. He was not loud. He was not dramatic. He did not shout warnings from hills like some fiery preacher. He simply spoke truth wherever he walked. Sometimes to one man alone, sometimes to small gatherings listening at dusk. His voice was steady, gentle, carrying both grief and hope. "Turn back," he would say. "There is a God who still loves you. There is mercy if you return. There is judgment if you refuse." Some people mocked him. Some shrugged and walked away. But some felt something stir inside them, something buried under years of sin and noise. Because Enoch did not speak with pride. He spoke with the weight of someone who knew God not as a distant king, but as a companion. Yet the world kept drifting into deeper darkness. Cain's descendants were building cities that echoed with violence. The strong ruled over the weak. People gathered in secret places to worship the works of their own hands. Blood stained the ground, and heaven watched in sorrow. In those days, Enoch married and became a father. And when his first son, Methuselah, was born, something unusual happened. The same night his child entered the world, Enoch received a revelation, a glimpse of the future so heavy, so sorrowful, that it changed the rhythm of his life forever. It was not a vision he shared with many. Only God knew the full weight of it. But the prophecy etched itself into Enoch's soul. When Methuselah dies, judgment will fall. The flood, the cleansing of a world drowning in sin, was still centuries away, but Enoch felt its shadow. This revelation didn't make him bitter or fearful. Instead, it pulled him closer to God. He walked even more faithfully, more intimately, more desperately. If humanity was running toward destruction, Enoch would spend his life trying to pull souls back from the edge. Every night he prayed. Every day he spoke truth. Every moment he walked with the one who walked with him. People often wondered why Enoch had such peace in a world so chaotic. They didn't understand the secret strength resting quietly inside him, the peace of a man who didn't just talk about God but knew him. Years passed. Seasons came and went. Enoch's reputation grew, but not the kind built on fame, not the kind built on power. He was known as the man whose face held a strange glow in the mornings, as if he had spoken with heaven itself. Children whispered stories about him. Adults watched him with curiosity. Some feared him because his words pierced their conscience like lightning. Still, Enoch walked with humility, with tenderness, with steady devotion. And God watched him with delight, for among all the people on earth, Enoch was different. He resisted the corruption surrounding him. He refused to bend toward evil. His heart stayed clean in a world growing darker by the day. And then came a day unlike any other. Enoch woke with a feeling deep inside him, a sense that heaven was calling him closer than usual. The sky looked brighter. The breeze carried a sweetness he had never felt before. Even the birds seemed to sing a softer melody. He walked as he always did, but every step felt lighter, as if the earth was slowly releasing him. His mind drifted to God, not in prayer, but in peaceful conversation. "Lord, the world is heavy today," he murmured. "I know," came the gentle answer. "Will they ever turn back? Some will, because you walked among them." Enoch felt tears rise. Not sorrowful tears, but tears of being known. The path ahead of him glowed softly, as if touched by heaven's hand. He kept walking. His heart beat steadily. The presence of God grew stronger with each step, until suddenly the world faded, the air shifted, and the boundary between earth and heaven thinned like morning mist. A voice, warm and full of eternal peace, whispered, "Enoch, come home." And he did. In a heartbeat, Enoch stepped out of time and into eternity, without tasting death, without a grave, without a farewell. One moment he walked on earth. The next he walked in heaven. They searched for him. For days. For weeks. But Enoch was gone. After Enoch disappeared from the earth, a strange quiet settled over the land. People who once ignored him now whispered his name with a mix of fear and wonder. Families gathered at night and spoke about how he used to warn them gently, how he looked at the world with eyes that seemed to see farther than anyone else. Children asked their parents, "Where did he go?" And no one had an answer that satisfied them. But heaven knew, and the earth felt the emptiness where Enoch once walked. Yet the story didn't end when he left. In some ways it began, because Enoch had a son, Methuselah, who grew up carrying the shadow of a prophecy he didn't fully understand. His father had told him only pieces, never the whole picture. Enoch would look at him sometimes with a softness mixed with sorrow, as if seeing through him into a distant future. Methuselah felt it even as a child, a weight, a purpose, something he didn't ask for but knew he couldn't escape. Years passed and Methuselah grew strong. He inherited his father's gentle eyes, though they carried more uncertainty. And like Enoch, he walked quietly, observing people, watching the world shift around him. But unlike Enoch, he didn't hear God's voice the same way. He didn't feel heaven's closeness with each breath. What he felt was something else, an ache, a longing, a sense that something terrible was waiting on the horizon. The world around him made that feeling stronger every year. Humanity was changing. The warmth that once filled the villages had slowly cooled. Siblings fought each other for land. Friends betrayed one another for small gains. Anger spread like smoke. People forgot the old stories of Adam and Eve, the warnings that sin carried death, the beauty of walking with God. Altars once built to honor the Creator gathered dust. Shrines built for idols multiplied. Strange practices, dark rituals, cruel entertainments, everything that broke God's heart grew more common. The ground itself felt tired, soaked with the weight of pride and violence. Methuselah watched all this with a heavy heart. Sometimes he would sit outside at night, looking at the stars, remembering Enoch's calm voice. "Father," he would whisper to the sky, "you walked with God. I don't know how to walk like you. I want to, but the world feels darker than ever." He expected no reply, but the silence around him always felt deeper after he spoke, as if somewhere unseen, heaven was listening. Many years later, Methuselah became a father too. His son, Lamech, was born during a time of increasing corruption. People were growing violent and greedy. Men took multiple wives simply to boast of their power. Kings began rising in scattered regions, cruel men who claimed authority that wasn't theirs. Battles erupted between families. The innocent suffered. And in that darkness, Methuselah raised his child with stories of Enoch. He would sit Lamech on his knee and tell him, "Your grandfather walked with God in a way I can't fully explain. The world didn't understand him, but heaven knew him. Remember that, my son. Remember that God sees everything." Lamech listened with wide eyes, absorbing every word. Enoch felt like a myth to him, a legend carved into the roots of creation. He often imagined what it must have been like, walking with God so closely that the world couldn't hold you anymore. But as Lamech grew, the darkness also grew. By the time he became a young man, cruelty was normal. Theft was common. Bloodshed no longer shocked people. Even the laughter of children sounded different, sharper, emptier, shaped by the harshness around them. Lamech couldn't understand how the earth had fallen so far from the stories his father told. One evening, when the wind carried the smell of smoke from a distant burning village, Lamech approached his father. "Is this the world we must accept?" he asked, frustration trembling in his voice. Methuselah looked at him with tired eyes. "No," he said softly, "but this is the world we live in." Lamech clenched his fists. "Then what hope is left?" "Hope will come, my son," Methuselah whispered. "Not today, but one day." He paused, his voice lowering. "Your grandfather once told me that God would act. That judgment would come. I don't know when, but the world cannot remain like this forever." Lamech didn't understand fully, but something in him believed it. And then one day, something remarkable happened. A child was born to Lamech, a child different from the rest, a child whose first breath seemed to carry a strange calm over the entire household. When they held him, the room felt lighter, the air felt clearer, as if a gentle breath from heaven had passed through. Lamech named him Noah. From the moment Noah opened his eyes, Methuselah felt a familiar feeling, a sensation he had known only once before, the night he was born, and his father looked at him with the sorrow of a prophecy. He saw something in Noah, something pure, something chosen. When Noah cried, his voice was soft, never sharp or restless. When he crawled, he moved toward the patches of sunlight instead of dark corners. When he was old enough to walk, he would wander near rivers, watching the light dance across the water, just like Enoch once did. And the older he grew, the more obvious it became. Noah had a heart untouched by the world's corruption. While other children learned to lie and fight, Noah stayed gentle. While other men mocked the old ways, Noah respected them. While the world chased wickedness, Noah sought the truth of the Creator. People laughed at him, called him strange, called him foolish, called him weak. But Noah didn't mind. Something deep inside him called him away from the ways of the people. He often asked Methuselah for stories about Enoch. "Tell me again how he walked with God," he would say, eyes glowing with curiosity. Methuselah would smile. "Your great-grandfather lived in a world as dark as this one." But he didn't let the darkness inside him. He walked with God because he chose to, every day, and God took him home. Noah listened carefully, letting the words sink into him. He didn't know it yet, but Enoch's legacy was resting on his shoulders. As Noah became a man, the world fell into its worst state yet. Giants roamed the earth, men of great size and strength, born from unions that defied God's order. They were fierce, violent, unstoppable. Their power corrupted whole regions. Cities bowed to them in fear. Bloodshed became entertainment. Sin reached heights that even heaven had not seen since the beginning. And through all this, heaven watched. It watched the cruelty. It watched the arrogance. It watched the mockery of truth. And something shifted in the realm above. The patience of God, vast, infinite, had been stretched for centuries. But now the stench of wickedness rose like smoke into the heavens, and the heart of God grieved deeply. Creation, meant to reflect his beauty, had become twisted. Then one day, the silence of heaven broke. God spoke, not in thunder, not in burning fire, but in a voice that carried the weight of sorrow and the firmness of justice. "Noah." Noah froze. His spirit trembled, not with fear, but with awe. He felt a presence so powerful it pressed against his chest, a holiness that made every hair on his arms rise. "I am here," he whispered, and God said, "The world has filled itself with violence. Every thought of mankind is corrupt. Their deeds stain the earth. Their hands shed blood. Their hearts chase evil. It cannot continue." Noah felt a heaviness settle over him. "What will you do, Lord?" he whispered. And the answer came like a gentle storm. "I will cleanse the earth." Noah's breath caught. The weight of those words was almost too much to bear. "But you," God continued, "you have found grace in my sight. You walk before me as Enoch once did. And through you, I will rebuild what the world has destroyed." In that moment, Noah realized something. The prophecy Enoch had carried, the shadow Methuselah felt his entire life, the restless ache Lamech never understood. It was all leading to this. He was the one chosen to stand when the world fell, the one chosen to build what no one had ever seen, a vessel of salvation. Noah bowed his head, overwhelmed. "Lord, I will obey." And heaven whispered back, "Walk with me," just like he once whispered to Enoch. When God's voice faded from the air, Noah stood frozen for a long moment. The world around him continued as if nothing had happened. Birds flew, leaves rustled, distant voices echoed from nearby homes. But Noah felt changed. It was as if heaven had placed a hand on his shoulder and left behind a weight too holy to ignore. He walked back toward his home slowly, each step heavier than the one before. As he approached, Lamech noticed something strange in his son's eyes, an intensity, a trembling calm that reminded him of the look Enoch carried before he disappeared from the world. "Noah," Lamech said quietly, "God has spoken to you, hasn't he?" Noah nodded, and the world around them seemed to hold its breath. Lamech felt a chill run through him. "Is it time?" "It will be," Noah whispered. "But not yet. God has given me a task, something the world has never seen before." He didn't say more that day. He couldn't. The weight of God's instructions was too heavy to release all at once. That night, Noah sat outside alone, staring at the stars. The sky felt higher than usual, darker somehow, as if mourning what humanity had become. He closed his eyes and remembered the voice. "Build an ark, a vessel of salvation, for the cleansing is coming." The next morning, Noah gathered his family, his wife, his sons Shem, Ham, Japheth, and their wives. They sat in a circle, eyes full of worry and curiosity. Noah took a deep breath. God spoke to me. Gasps rose. Methuselah bowed his head. He had known this day would come. Noah continued, He will judge the earth. The violence, the corruption, the world has crossed a line. A great flood is coming. Everything that breathes will perish. The room fell into a stunned silence. Even the air felt still. But God, Noah added, will save us. He has commanded me to build an ark, a great vessel, big enough for us and for the animals he sends, big enough to survive a judgment the world cannot imagine. Shem swallowed hard. Father, a flood? Water covering the entire earth? Yes. Japheth frowned. People will think we're mad. Noah gave a tired smile. They already think that. Ham looked at him with fear. Will we survive? If we obey, Noah said softly, we will. They began the work the next day. At first, the villagers simply stared. Noah was known as the quiet, righteous man, the one who refused to join violent feasts, who didn't bow to idols, who didn't chase power. People already whispered about him. But when he and his sons began clearing a massive piece of land, laying giant beams and measuring impossible lengths of wood, the whispers turned into laughter. What are you building, Noah? One man shouted. A palace for your grandchildren? Maybe a tower to reach your God? A woman teased. Another yelled, or is he making a giant coffin? Laughter echoed through the valley. Noah ignored it. His sons tried to ignore it. But the mockery grew like a storm. Every day they worked. Every day the crowds gathered. Sometimes Noah looked up briefly while dragging heavy logs, and he saw familiar faces. Men he had once prayed for, children he had once taught kindness to, neighbors he had helped. Now they pointed fingers and laughed cruelly. But he kept building. The ark grew, towering higher than any structure the world had ever seen. Its wooden beams rose like ribs of a sleeping giant. Its length stretched across fields. Even from a distance, it looked like a shadow against the sky. People scoffed louder as it grew. Where's the flood, Noah? The sky looks clear today. Will water fall from heaven itself? Mad old man. Prophet of nonsense. But sometimes, late at night, when the world was quiet and the mocking voices were gone, Noah felt something else. Heaven's silent footsteps beside him. A peace that wrapped around his tired bones. A whisper, almost like Enoch once heard. Walk with me. And he did. Years passed. Decades passed. The ark stood like a monument to faith. And wickedness grew like an infection. Violence spread deeper into the earth. The giants, men of terrifying strength, roamed freely, ruling small regions with savagery. Cities fell into chaos. People treated bloodshed as entertainment. Innocent cries were ignored. Noah felt his stomach twist when he saw what humanity had become. Lord, he whispered one night, how much farther must the world fall? But heaven stayed silent. God wasn't absent, he was waiting for one last moment of mercy. One last call to repentance through Noah's obedience. One last chance for people to turn back. But they didn't. Instead, they grew bolder, crueler, mocking not just Noah, but God himself. One afternoon, while Noah and his sons hammered the final outer panels, a group of men approached, drunk, loud, stinking of violence. Hey Noah, one slurred. When this flood comes, will your giant boat float up to heaven too? Another laughed. Maybe he thinks he's the new Enoch. Noah paused, wiping sweat from his forehead. God's mercy still waits for you, he said quietly. Turn back while there is time. The men burst into laughter. Turn back. From what? We enjoy our lives. If your God had any power, he'd have stopped us by now. Their arrogance pierced Noah's heart. He turned away, grief heavier than anger. Methuselah, now very old, watched from a distance. His eyes glistened with sorrow, not just because of what the men said, but because he knew what their words meant. He knew the prophecy was closing in. One night, dark clouds gathered in a way Noah had never seen. The wind shifted strangely, as if the air itself was warning the earth. Noah stepped outside, feeling the heaviness in the sky. A voice spoke again, clear, steady, absolute.
Noah.
He dropped to his knees. The time has come. Take your family into the ark, for in 7 days rain will fall and it will not stop. Noah's heart pounded. 7 days, Lord?
Yes.
And bring with you the animals I send, 2 of every kind, male and female, for they will carry life into the world I will renew. Noah felt tears sting his eyes. Lord, have they truly gone too far? They have chosen darkness, God replied. But you have walked with me. The presence lifted, leaving Noah trembling in the night air. The next morning, something unbelievable began to happen. Animals started appearing.
Pairs of them.
Walking calmly, as if guided by invisible hands. Deer trotted peacefully. Wolves padded silently. Elephants rumbled as they approached. Birds flew in swirling patterns above the ark, landing gently on its beams. Even lions walked without aggression, settling into the ark's shadows with quiet obedience. People watched in stunned confusion. What is this? Why are the animals listening to him? Is this some kind of trick? Noah, what magic is this? But it wasn't magic. It was God gathering life. As the animals entered the ark, the valley grew strangely silent, an eerie calm before judgment. Noah and his family guided them carefully, placing each pair in their compartments. Even the fiercest creatures moved with unnatural peace. But the crowds grew louder. Some were frightened. Some were furious. Some mocked even harder, desperate to hold on to their pride. A group of young men shouted from a hill, "If the world ends, we'll drink and laugh until the last moment." Children ran around the ark throwing stones, daring God to respond. And yet, no rain fell. Not yet. On the 7th day, the sky looked darker than Noah had ever seen. Thick clouds rolled across the heavens like an army of shadows. The air felt heavy, charged, ready to burst. God spoke one last time. Noah, enter the ark.
He turned to his family.
They stood at the massive entrance, trembling, not with fear, but with the weight of what was coming. Inside, Noah whispered. They stepped in. The animals stirred softly. The wood creaked. The world outside roared with wicked laughter. Noah took one final look at the people he had warned for a lifetime. Some laughed. Some cursed. Some begged him to open the ark, though they still didn't believe. Noah's throat tightened. His voice broke as he whispered, I tried. I truly tried. And then, the unimaginable happened. The massive door, too heavy for any man to move, began to shift. Not from inside, but from outside. An invisible force pushed it, slow and steady. The wood shook. The hinges groaned. The door sealed shut with a deep echo. God himself had closed it. The last sound Noah heard from outside was laughter turning into sudden, terrified silence. Then a single drop of rain hit the roof. Then another, and another, and another, until the sky opened, and the world began to drown. The moment the first drop touched the ark's roof, Noah felt something shift inside him. It wasn't just fear or sorrow. It was the realization that the world he had known since childhood was now taking its final breath. His hands trembled slightly as the rain grew heavier, pounding against the wood like 1,000 tiny fists. Inside the ark, the animals stirred. The wind howled outside. And for the first time in his life, Noah felt truly separated from the world. Shem approached him quietly. Father, he whispered, will they survive out there? Noah closed his eyes. He didn't want to imagine the answer. He remembered their faces, people he once worked beside, families he once greeted every morning, even those who had mocked him. Despite their cruelty, they had still been human, still creations of God, still souls. The door is shut by God, Noah said softly. Only he decides now. Japheth came to stand beside them, his face pale. The ground is shaking.
And it was.
The ark trembled suddenly. The earth beneath them groaned like something ancient and wounded. From deep below, a roar rose low, thunderous, terrifyingly alive. Noah recognized the sound instantly. It was the breaking of the fountains of the great deep. The flood wasn't just falling from the sky. It was rising from the belly of the earth. He held his breath as another tremor shook the ark. Wooden beams creaked, ropes tightened, and animals let out cries of fear. Ham rushed forward to calm the goats, while Shem moved toward the elephants, murmuring soft words, trying to steady them. Then it happened. A violent surge of water slammed against the side of the ark. Noah grabbed a beam for support. His sons did the same. Their wives held on to anything they could. The ark, massive as it was, shifted with the force of the rising waters. Outside, the world descended into chaos. Thunder cracked across the heavens. Lightning tore the sky in jagged streaks. Wind screamed like 1,000 voices crying out at once. And the rain, ceaseless, furious, fell in sheets so thick that even the mountains blurred into shadows. Noah couldn't see outside through the sealed walls, but he could hear everything. The roar of the storm, the crashing waves, the distant cries of people who once laughed at him. Each sound felt like a blow to his heart. He sank to his knees. "Lord, have mercy," he whispered. But mercy had been offered. For years, 4 generations. Now justice was pouring from the sky. Hours passed, then a day, then 2. The ark rose higher as the waters climbed relentlessly. Noah's family stayed close, sleeping in shifts, eating little, praying often. The groans of the ark became a familiar sound, a reminder that the vessel God commanded was strong enough to endure what the world could not. But outside, the world was drowning. Sometimes, Noah imagined he heard voices shouting, screaming, begging. He pressed his hands over his ears, but the echoes still found their way into his mind. He had warned them. He had pleaded. He had cried in prayer for them. But when the rain began, their laughter died too late. On the 7th day of unbroken rain, the ark rose so high that Noah knew the earth beneath was long gone under the waters. The land he once walked on with bare feet, the trees he had grown beside, the valley he grew up in, all buried under a sea with no end in sight. What terrified him most wasn't the storm. It was the silence that began to replace it. A silence so absolute it made his heart ache. Weeks passed. The rain finally ceased, but the water still churned. The ark floated over a world washed clean, yet utterly destroyed. Inside, Noah and his family lived by routine. Feeding the animals, cleaning the stalls, checking the structure, praying, waiting. Waiting was the hardest part. There was no window large enough to see outside clearly. No way of knowing what remained. Only one small opening high near the roof, sealed for now. Noah sometimes stood beneath it, sensing the faintest draft of cold air. "Father," Shem said one morning, "how much longer will we be here?" "As long as God wills," Noah replied gently. "But what if the water never goes down?" Japheth asked, though he tried to hide the fear in his voice. "It will," Noah said. "God does not forget his promises." Ham, always the most restless, paced back and forth. "I miss the ground," he muttered. "I miss seeing the sky clearly. I miss everything." Noah placed a hand on his shoulder. "We have lost much, but we have also been saved from much." Ham nodded silently, though melancholy lingered in his eyes. At night, Noah often lay awake, listening to the sea roll beneath them. Sometimes he wondered what Enoch would have said if he had been there. His great-grandfather had walked with God more closely than anyone. Would he have comforted Noah? Or simply reminded him that God's ways, though heavy, were perfect? Noah whispered into the darkness, "Great-grandfather, you saw what was coming. I wish I had understood more." But the only answer was the slow groan of the ark drifting across endless water. Inside the ark, life developed its own rhythm. Shem loved organizing and checking supplies. Ham learned to soothe frightened animals. Japheth strengthened the beams and tied new ropes. The women tended to the smaller creatures, singing softly to calm them. Even in the gloom, a kind of fragile peace existed. Sometimes, when the goats bleated too loudly, or the lions growled restlessly, Noah smiled to himself. As strange as it sounded, the noise reminded him that life still existed, that hope still breathed. And yet, every time he stood by the walls and felt the vast emptiness outside, a heavy sadness clung to him. He had not only lost neighbors, he had lost an entire world, a culture, a history, a lifetime built on earth's soil. One night, overwhelmed with emotion, Noah sat alone while the others slept. The lantern beside him flickered gently. Lord, he whispered, you saved us, but sometimes my heart feels like it's sinking under the weight of what was lost. In the quiet, he felt a warmth settle into his bones. Not a voice this time, not words, just a presence, a reassurance, a reminder that the story wasn't over. And Noah breathed easier. After many months, the water finally began to settle. One morning, the ark shuddered gently, not from a storm, not from a wave, but from something solid beneath them. The ark had touched ground. Noah froze, hardly daring to believe it. A mountain, perhaps? A ridge? A high point in a world still submerged? His heart raced as he climbed toward the small window. His hands shook while removing the covering. Cold air rushed in, carrying a scent he had forgotten, the faintest breath of fresh earth. Noah inhaled deeply, tears filling his eyes. He couldn't see much. Clouds still hung heavy. Mist veiled the horizon. But he saw the tops of jagged peaks piercing through the waters like dark fingers reaching for the sky. Mountains, he whispered. The ark had come to rest somewhere high. He closed the window again, sealing the moment in his heart. When he told the family, joy rippled through the ark. Even the animals seemed calmer, as if sensing the earth's nearness. But the waiting wasn't over. The water still covered much of the world. Weeks later, Noah opened the window again and released a raven. It flew back and forth, never settling. The waters were still too deep. He sent out a dove. It returned, finding no place to rest. His heart sank. Still more time. 7 days later, he sent the dove again. This time, it returned with something delicate held between its beak. A small olive leaf. A single sign of life. A small whisper of hope. When Noah saw it, his breath caught. He held the leaf in his trembling hands, staring at it as if it were a treasure.
Fresh, green, alive.
He called out loudly, and the whole ark gathered around him. Even Methuselah, resting quietly in a corner, smiled with tired eyes. Land, Noah whispered. Life has begun again. But he waited still, patient, obedient. 7 days later, the dove didn't return at all. It had found a home. God's promise was unfolding. Finally, after months and months of confinement, God spoke. Noah, leave the ark. Noah closed his eyes, letting the words wash over him. He gathered his family, opened the great door. A flood of light rushed in, warm, golden, beautiful, and they stepped onto the new earth, fresh soil under their feet, new air in their lungs. A world reborn. The mountains glistened. The sky stretched open and clear. Green shoots pushed through the soil. Streams trickled softly. Noah fell to his knees, overwhelmed. Tears flowed freely. Thank you, Lord, he whispered, forehead pressed to the ground. Thank you for mercy, for salvation, for a new beginning. Behind him, his family watched silently, their faces glowing in the sunlight. And somewhere high above, unseen yet present, heaven smiled. The God who judged was also the God who restored. The God who cleansed was also the God who created anew. And Noah, the man who walked with God, became the father of a world reborn. The night air felt different.
Soft.
Almost alive, as if something unseen was brushing across the trees outside Enoch's home. Enoch sat alone, a small clay lamp glowing beside him. The room flickered with warm light, but his heart carried a weight he couldn't explain. It was the kind of feeling you get right before a storm. Except this wasn't fear. It was expectation. A quiet whisper from the inside that something is coming. He closed his eyes. Lord, I feel you calling. What do you want me to see? No answer.
Just stillness.
Stillness, so deep it felt like time had paused to breathe. Suddenly, a tremor passed through the ground beneath him, not violent, just enough to make the lamp flicker. Enoch straightened. He felt a presence, powerful yet gentle, moving toward him like light walking without feet. And then he heard it, not with his ears, with his soul. Come outside. Enoch stood. His hands trembled, not in fear but awe. He stepped out into the night, and when he lifted his eyes, his breath caught. The stars were moving, not falling, not shifting, moving. They swirled into patterns he'd never seen, shaping rivers of light across the sky. It was like heaven was drawing a path, one only his spirit could fully understand. Then the light descended. A beam, soft and white, flowed down from the sky like a waterfall. It didn't burn. It didn't blind. It rested gently on the ground about 20 feet ahead of him. Enoch walked toward it, each step pulling him deeper into a silence that felt sacred. A voice rose from the light. Enoch, I have watched you. Warmth spread through his chest. Every fear he had ever carried fell away. You walked with me when others walked away. A second beam appeared, brighter than the first. Inside it, Enoch could make out a figure.
Tall.
Radiant. Not bound by any human shape, yet somehow familiar, like purity taking form. Enoch instinctively bowed his head. My Lord, speak. Your servant listens. The presence moved closer. The air around Enoch changed, thicker with glory, yet tender enough to breathe in like peace. A time is coming, the voice said, when wickedness will drown the earth. But you have chosen righteousness. Images flashed before Enoch's eyes. People laughing at him. Nations falling into darkness. Children wandering far from God. A flood no words could describe. And then,
light.
Restoration. A covenant. A promise. Enoch felt tears slip down his face. These weren't tears of fear. They were tears of someone who has just seen God's heart break for the world. The voice continued. There is a message inside you that generations will need. I will show you mysteries hidden since the beginning. You will write what I reveal. And one day, though your feet walk this earth, your spirit will walk in places mortals have never seen. Enoch swallowed hard. My Lord, who am I to see such things? The light pulsed gently. You are the one who walks with me. Enoch felt something shift inside him, a deeper calling, a deeper surrender. He knew that life would never be the same after this night. Then the presence stepped fully into the beam of light. Enoch saw the brilliance of heaven reflected in it, the purity of eternity, the love of the one who shaped the worlds. Enoch, tonight I open the door of revelation. Come. Enoch took a single step forward. The ground glowed beneath his feet. The stars brightened until the entire sky shimmered like a living ocean. He felt himself lifted, not physically, but spiritually, his heart carried upward like a flame drawn by a greater fire. Suddenly, visions poured into him like rushing water. Heaven's halls, angels moving with purpose, books filled with the destinies of nations, a throne radiating glory brighter than the sun, a future judgment, a final victory. Each image came with such clarity that Enoch gasped like someone underwater finally reaching air. Then God's voice returned, softer this time. What I show you tonight, carry it faithfully. One day, I will bring you fully into my presence, without death, without pain, without the fall of the flesh. Enoch dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. My Lord, I am yours. Wherever you lead, I will walk. The light faded gently, folding back into the heavens like a curtain closing, but the presence remained inside him, glowing like a living fire. Enoch rose slowly, breathing in the night as if it were new, because it was. Nothing about this world felt the same anymore. He whispered into the silence. I walked with God tonight, and he walked with me. Behind him, the lamp in his home flickered. But this time, it wasn't because of the wind. It was because he carried light now. The days after that night were unlike any others in Enoch's life. Though he walked among people as usual, everything seemed thinner, quieter, more fragile. Every laugh sounded distant, every argument muted, every act of cruelty or kindness amplified in his soul. He felt the invisible threads connecting all hearts, how each choice affected the web of life. He had been chosen, not merely to witness, but to understand. Enoch spent hours in prayer. He didn't pray as most men did, begging for blessings or protection. He prayed with eyes wide open, seeking the hidden will of God. He asked questions no one could answer. Lord, why do you allow the world to fall so far? Why does darkness seem to grow stronger than the light? And the voice answered, not in words, but in visions. One evening, as the sun touched the horizon with golden fingers, Enoch was lifted, not fully yet, but in glimpses, into the heavens. He saw gates of crystal, rivers of fire and light, and the angels moving in patterns of perfect harmony. He understood their purpose, not just their presence. Some guarded, some guided, some rejoiced at the fidelity of humans, and all moved as one with God's will. Then he was shown the earth from above. He saw humans walking paths of darkness, ignorant of the consequences that awaited. Yet he also saw sparks of hope, small acts of kindness, children smiling, hearts still capable of love. This, God whispered, is why I chose you, not only to see the destruction, but to carry hope where it remains. Enoch's heart swelled. He understood that walking with God didn't mean removing himself from the world. It meant being the bridge, the vessel through which God's light could touch the earth without consuming it entirely. Over the following years, Enoch spoke to people wherever he went. His voice was gentle, but carried weight. Men of great power often ignored him or mocked him, but small ears listened. Children's hearts received the truth without fear. Some women came quietly, asking for wisdom in their homes. Farmers paused mid-field, hearing his words and remembering the creator of the earth. One day, while walking a narrow path along a river, Enoch saw a young man beating a dog. The animal whimpered, twisted, tried to escape. Enoch stepped forward calmly.
Stop, he said.
Not a shout, not an angered cry, just a quiet authority. The young man froze. His eyes widened at Enoch's calm gaze. Why do you care? Because you cannot live apart from mercy, Enoch replied. Your strength is not in your hands, but in your heart. The boy stared, confused, ashamed, yet strangely relieved. And when Enoch walked away, the child's hands trembled, but he no longer raised them in anger. Such small victories accumulated silently. Enoch did not seek fame. He did not demand recognition. Yet, wherever he walked, change followed, not by force, but by presence. And the earth itself seemed to respond. Trees grew taller near him, rivers glimmered brighter, the wind carried softer songs. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but those who noticed could not explain it. One night, Enoch felt a new pull from heaven. The stars above shifted again, forming patterns that only he could understand. It was not merely light, but a language of destiny, guiding him further. The voice spoke again. Enoch, the time approaches when I will take you from the earth. You have walked faithfully. You have been a witness and a guide. Soon, you will enter fully into my presence. Enoch bowed his head. A mix of awe and sorrow filled him. He loved humanity. Every frailty, every hope, every small act of courage, he cherished it all. To leave, even by divine calling, would mean leaving these lives behind. Lord, will they remember? He whispered. Some will, the voice replied. And through your legacy, others will know the path. Years continued, yet Enoch's life remained unchanged externally. To the eyes of men, he was an ordinary man, tending to his family, walking through valleys and villages, speaking truths that few fully understood. But internally, he carried the cosmos within him, the weight of heaven, the vision of eternity, the knowledge of judgment and grace intertwined. Children began calling him a prophet. Adults whispered about him as a holy man, yet Enoch never corrected or claimed a title. Titles were for the world. His walk belonged to God alone. And then, one evening, as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, painting the sky in red and gold, Enoch felt it, the final pull. It began in his chest, like the heartbeat of the earth itself calling him higher. His legs trembled. His eyes widened. The wind circled around him, carrying whispers of angels he could not yet see. He knew the hour had come. He called his family together. Methuselah, now very old, grasped Enoch's hands. "My son, my father, you will go soon." Enoch smiled softly, pressing his forehead to Methuselah's. "I go as one who has walked with the Lord, nothing more, nothing less. Guard the family. Carry our faith. Love the earth." His sons stood silently, their hearts full of awe and grief. They had never imagined this moment, the departure of the man who had been both father and guide, who had spoken to them of mysteries they barely understood. "Remember," Enoch whispered, "walk as I walked, with your eyes on God, not the world." That night, he walked out under the open sky. The stars pulsed, moving closer, guiding him. A light descended from the heavens, not blinding, not overwhelming, but gentle and compelling. Enoch felt no fear, only peace, only certainty. He lifted his hands, feeling the wind swirl around him like the breath of God. His feet left the ground, slowly at first, then faster, ascending. And the last human eye to see him on earth, the eyes of Methuselah, watched as Enoch rose, carried by the unseen hand of God, until he vanished into the glory of heaven itself. The earth grew quiet. The forests whispered. The rivers hummed softly. And a deep sense of reverence settled over the land, as if all creation recognized the extraordinary journey of the man who walked with God. Though Enoch had vanished, his influence lingered like the soft echo of a bell. Methuselah often walked alone at dusk, thinking of his father's face, the warmth of his guidance, and the strange light that always seemed to follow him. He knew the world was about to change, yet he feared what the coming years would bring. The violence of humanity had not stopped with Enoch's departure. Men grew bolder. Cities expanded into the wilderness. Wickedness spread like wildfire. Even Methuselah, old as he was, could see the seeds of destruction. But within his heart, a spark of faith, learned from Enoch, remained unbroken. He taught Noah, his grandson, the ways of righteousness, not as lessons to earn wealth or fame, but as truths that bound the soul to God. "Walk as your grandfather walked," Methuselah would say, "even when the world laughs, even when the shadows grow long. God sees. That is enough." Noah listened. He carried the words in his heart, and in quiet moments, he felt a presence, a whisper of the guidance Enoch once provided. But he also saw the growing corruption around him. Villagers stole, lied, and committed acts of violence without remorse. The giants roamed, sowing fear and chaos. Even families he knew were torn apart by greed. One day, Noah's spirit grew heavy as he wandered through a clearing near his home. The trees seemed to bow with sorrow. A child approached him, timid, clutching a small wooden toy. "Noah," the boy asked softly, "why does God let people do such bad things?" Noah knelt, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Because he gave them free will," he said gently. "We must choose to follow him, even when others do not. Our choices carry light, even in darkness." The boy nodded, holding the words close. Noah realized then that Enoch's legacy wasn't only in actions or miracles. It was in teaching hearts to recognize God, even when the world rejected him. Years passed. Noah's life was devoted to building, teaching, and preparing. One day, while inspecting a grove of trees for construction, he felt a presence unlike any other. The winds shifted suddenly. The birds fell silent. The sky darkened not with clouds, but with something unearthly. Noah knew immediately what it meant. God was calling. That night, in prayer, Noah heard the words clearly. "Build the ark, for the world has filled itself with violence, and judgment is coming. Yet you, Noah, have found grace in my sight. Through you, life will continue." The command weighed upon him. The task seemed impossible, yet divine authority made it undeniable. Noah shared the words with his family. They were frightened, yet obedient. Together, they began clearing land, gathering materials, and crafting the enormous vessel that would stand as humanity's lifeline.
People mocked.
Children jeered. Even elders whispered doubt. Why build a boat when the rivers are dry? Who has ever heard of such madness? Noah listened quietly. The voice of God had echoed through his soul, guiding each action. His heart did not waver. Each beam placed, each measurement made, was an act of faith, honoring the guidance passed down from Enoch. As the ark grew, Noah's family worked tirelessly. Animals came naturally, guided as if by unseen hands. Pairs of creatures, birds, mammals, reptiles, found their way to the growing vessel, obeying a divine rhythm only Noah could perceive. Yet the world outside continued its descent. Cities burned from greed and warfare. The giants, men of extraordinary strength and malice, terrorized regions unchecked. Every night, Noah prayed for mercy, for repentance, for lives spared, but the echoes of sin rose like a storm. Then the rains began. At first, they were light, gentle drops tapping against leaves and rooftops. But they intensified quickly, pounding the earth, flooding valleys, drowning lowlands. Rivers swelled into monstrous torrents. The people who had mocked Noah now ran in panic, but the door to the ark remained closed to them. Noah and his family moved inside, animals following in organized pairs. Each roar, chirp, and bleat echoed through the vessel, a symphony of life preserved. The door closed. The ark trembled under the weight of the waters, yet God's design held firm. The flood continued for days, weeks, months. Noah's faith never wavered. He spent hours in prayer, communing with God, recounting the lessons of Enoch, and teaching his sons the importance of obedience. The world outside drowned, but inside the ark, life persisted, a living testament to God's mercy. One morning, as the ark floated over the submerged lands, Noah saw something miraculous. A small olive leaf, bright green, floated past the window, a sign that land existed, that life would endure. Hope surged through his heart, and he pressed his hands together in thanksgiving. Finally, God spoke again. Leave the ark when the time is right. Step onto the new earth and walk with me. Noah understood. The flood had cleansed, but it had also preserved. A new world awaited, born from the obedience and faith of one man who carried the legacy of Enoch. When the ark came to rest on Mount Ararat, Noah and his family stepped onto solid ground. The animals dispersed, guided by instinct and divine design. The sun broke through clouds, shining on a world washed clean yet brimming with potential. Noah knelt, pressing his forehead to the earth. Tears ran freely. He whispered a prayer of gratitude, invoking the name of Enoch, whose faith had paved the path, whose walk with God had inspired generations, whose legacy had made this salvation possible. The world had been judged, yet God's mercy endured. Humanity would rebuild. Life would continue. And the eternal connection between God and man, exemplified by Enoch and carried forward by Noah, would guide them through the ages. The waters had receded. The sun rose on a world washed clean, golden rays illuminating valleys, hills, and mountains previously hidden beneath the flood. Noah's family stepped cautiously onto the soft earth, feeling its solidity for the first time in over a year. Each breath of air was new, each sound alive. The chirping of birds, the rustle of leaves, the distant roar of rivers carving paths through the land. Noah looked at his sons, their eyes wide with awe and relief. They had survived. They had been preserved. And yet, the weight of what had passed pressed on them all. The loss of the world that had been, the destruction of lives, the judgment they had witnessed firsthand. Walk carefully, Noah whispered, voice full of reverence. The earth is new, but we must honor it. God has given us another chance. And as they stepped forward, the animals dispersed across the land. Lions prowled, elephants tromped gently, birds flew overhead, all moving instinctively toward habitats prepared for them by the unseen hand of God. Noah felt a deep peace settle over his heart, for life had endured. But even in this moment of restoration, the memory of Enoch lingered. Noah often thought of his great-grandfather, the man who had walked with God and vanished from the earth without experiencing death. Enoch's walk with God had not only inspired obedience, but had created a bridge between heaven and humanity, a legacy that had endured through Methuselah and now through Noah himself. Days turned into weeks. Noah and his family began the work of rebuilding. They planted seeds, cultivated the soil, and established small settlements, always mindful of the lessons learned. Violence and corruption had been cleansed, but the human heart still contained choices. Noah taught his children and grandchildren to listen to God, to act with mercy, and to honor life in every form. One morning, as Noah walked to inspect a young grove of olive trees, he felt a familiar presence. It was subtle at first, a warmth in his chest, a gentle tug in his spirit. Then the wind shifted, carrying a whisper, "Walk with me." Noah closed his eyes, letting the words sink in. He realized that God's presence never left those who sought it, even after destruction or judgment. And though Enoch had been taken to heaven, his example remained. A life lived in harmony with God could change the course of generations. Noah began to understand the depth of that legacy. The flood had been both an end and a beginning. It had judged wickedness, preserved the faithful, and set the stage for a renewed covenant between God and humanity. Enoch's life, though unseen in the final act of the flood, had prepared the world for this moment. His walk with God had shaped hearts capable of obedience and hope. As years passed, Noah's family grew. The settlements expanded. The children learned not only to survive, but to respect the land, to honor each creature, and to keep the memory of God alive in their hearts. Every act of kindness, every choice to do what was right, became a living tribute to the faith of Enoch, the endurance of Methuselah, and the obedience of Noah. And then, one night, Noah sat beneath a sky glittering with stars, the same sky that had once guided Enoch. The wind whispered softly through the trees, carrying the scent of earth and rain. Noah lifted his eyes, feeling the weight of years and the fulfillment of God's promises. "Lord," he whispered, "thank you for your guidance. Thank you for preserving life. Thank you for showing us that walking with you is the path to eternity." In that moment, Noah saw a light on the horizon. Not fire, not storm, but a radiance that seemed to descend from heaven itself. He smiled, knowing that God's presence had never left humanity. And as he rose to his feet, he felt the spirit of Enoch beside him. Not in form, but in essence, a reminder that faith, obedience, and love endure beyond time, beyond destruction, beyond death itself. Noah understood fully now. Life would continue. Humanity would grow, stumble, and rise again. The earth would bear both sorrow and joy, but those who walked with God would always have a legacy of light. And Enoch's example, that extraordinary life of walking with God, would forever inspire all who sought the divine path. With the dawn breaking, Noah led his family forward into the renewed world, hearts full of gratitude, hands ready to build, and spirits guided by the eternal light. The story of humanity had been written again, shaped by faith, preserved through obedience, and illuminated by the legacy of a man who had walked with God. And so, the earth breathed anew, life endured, and the eternal bond between God and humanity, begun in the footsteps of Enoch, continued to shine across the generations.